They may have ducked BYU this bowl season, but Notre Dame will be playing in Provo, Utah next fall, and it's an incredible set of circumstances that led BYU and the Fighting Irish to inking this deal.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on the show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On America's #1 sports podcast network. Coming up on today's show, BYU and Notre Dame have inked a home-and-home agreement, and it's pretty remarkable how this all came about. We'll talk about what led to the Fighting Irish, who don't want to play BYU in the bowl season this year, but are willing to play in Provo, Utah next fall. Yeah, we'll get into all of that. Then we'll talk BYU basketball. An incredible performance, one of the more seminal performances you'll ever see from a freshman in all of college basketball. Literally, A.J. DeBonsa electrified the crowd last night in BYU's win over Eastern Washington. We'll break all that down. And we'll finish up today's show with some Christmas wishes because, it's that time of year. It's Festivus officially today, but Christmas Eve tomorrow, and then Christmas on Thursday. We'll talk a little bit about the spirit of the holiday. It's all brought to you today by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, redeem the promo code Locked On College, and get $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, so if you missed the news yesterday for whatever reason, BYU and Notre Dame announced out of the seemingly clear blue sky that they have agreed to a home-and-home deal to play a two-game series, the first of which will be in Provo, Utah next fall. Now, I was bemoaning the fact last week that the ACC absolutely had hurt BYU by virtue of announcing that 12 of their 17 teams are moving to a 9-game conference schedule next season, and that prompted Cal to have to cancel a home-and-home series they had scheduled with BYU for next year, leaving a gaping hole in BYU's schedule because they didn't have a Power 4 opponent on the schedule. And that obviously is a rule that the Big 12 has implemented. You play 9 conference games, and then obviously you play a 10th Power 4 game from somebody else in the major conferences. Well, it felt like it was pretty dire straits for BYU looking back at it because, simply put, everybody of any note when it came to a Power 4 schedule in the hole that BYU had, it looked like September 12th, 2026. It was like, it's pretty slim pickings. So you were wondering, okay, is the Big 12 going to step up and help out BYU maybe with an intra-conference Big 12 game? Would they give them a waiver to play the likes of a Washington State or a Boise State on down the list? Well, out of the clear blue sky, as I mentioned suddenly yesterday, announcement comes that Notre Dame and BYU are playing a home-and-home series. And the reason this came about is because USC, a long-time rival of Notre Dame's, in fact, it's one of those rivalries that has really rarely been interrupted. It started being played in 1926 between the Trojans and the Fighting Irish, alternating locales between South Bend and Los Angeles, California. And the only things that have caused this rivalry to go on hiatus are two pretty important events, aka World War II and the COVID pandemic that caused Notre Dame to join the ACC for the one season back in 2020. Those are the only two reasons this rivalry has ever gone on hiatus. And now USC, for whatever reason, because either Lincoln Riley is scared, they have pretty poor leadership, maybe a complement of all of that going together, they do not want to play Notre Dame in October and thereby have a loss that could affect maybe their Big Ten chances, even though they don't play it's not a Big Ten game, or more importantly, their college football playoff chances. Probably the point I should have made first is that they don't want to have a loss on their docket that could cost them their chance in the college football playoff. So they have announced that they are nixing, or at least putting on hiatus, this rivalry against Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame turned right around and called up BYU, realizing that, hey, we suddenly have a hole in our schedule, called up BYU and said, hey, let's get this thing on. Now, some of you may want to point out that Brian Santiago did something that Tom Homo couldn't do. I more think of this as just it's a compliment, or at least it's a whole put together of all different circumstances that led these two programs to inking a deal and putting it together pretty much on the fly. Very rarely do you see deals like this come together so quickly. But I do think that there was need on BYU side, obviously, for a Power 4. And I know that Notre Dame's not in a Power 4 conference, but by virtue of the fact that if they finish in the top 12 next year, they'll be guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. They are a Power 4 level program. That fills that requirement and that hole in the schedule for BYU. And also, Notre Dame, by virtue of losing their rivalry game against USC, they needed to fill out their schedule as well, and BYU fills in that for them. I think this is a major win for BYU, especially for the fact, because if there was really one thing that maybe BYU stood firm on when it came to whatever negotiations this required, they probably said, hey, we had you guys by the tail for years because you owed us a return game in Provo, Utah. They ultimately modified into a Shamrock Series game that gave Notre Dame 80% of the tickets at Allegiant Stadium, and that was supposed to be a, quote, home game for BYU. If there was one thing I think BYU stood firm on in this, is that they were not about to go into a home-and-home deal where Notre Dame got the first of the two games. They were said, either you come to Provo, Utah in 2026 or no deal. Now, that's me speculating. I'll be very clear about that, but it has to have been played out that way because I don't think BYU wanted to find themselves playing a game in South Bend in 2026 and then Notre Dame turning right around and saying, hey, thanks for playing that game. Here's your buyout for the return game. That was not going to fly for BYU, and for good reason, because they have been strung along by Notre Dame quite literally for almost the better part of a decade as an independent to try and get a return game. It was originally a 6-game, 4 games in South Bend, 2 games in Provo, Utah deal that got modified to a 2-for-1 and ultimately became like essentially a 3-for-0 when it came to Notre Dame getting essentially 3 home games, albeit one of them being at a neutral site venue, but with, 4 out of every 5 fans being a Notre Dame fan in attendance. So crazy circumstance that led to this happening, but it is a huge addition to BYU's schedule. And according to what Ross Dellinger's reported, this game will be played in October. So BYU still, in theory, has a hole in their September 12th schedule, but doing my research and other guys like Robbie McCombs and others out there pointed this out, that both BYU and Arizona, who they are scheduled to play a conference matchup in 2026, they both currently have an open date on September 12th. So to accommodate BYU playing a game in October against Notre Dame, you very easily, if you're the Big 12 schedule makers, move Arizona and BYU to the second week of the season, September 12th, have them play that game, and then whether it's the second, third, fourth week in October, whenever it fits in Notre Dame's schedule where USC was supposed to go, you play that game in Provo, Utah, and we're off to the races. I think this is a major upgrade to BYU's non-conference schedule. No longer can anybody out there, when it comes to the college football playoff committee, say, who did BYU play? Because if you're going to question Notre Dame's notoriety, their prowess, their standing in the pantheon of college football, you don't know what the history of this sport entails, and especially what Notre Dame means to the history of this sport, even though the last time they won a national championship, yours truly was 1 year old. That's beside the point. It's a major upgrade to BYU's non-conference schedule. It's a high-profile game, and also BYU, 7 home games in 2026. It's another thing we can celebrate here, as they will have a pretty stout home schedule and have a majority of their games in Provo for the first time in quite some time, as they'll only play on the road 5 times next fall. All right, coming up next, we are going to talk about BYU basketball. An incredible performance that any of you who are at the Marriott Center like myself last night were privy to watch. AJ DiBonsa absolutely shined under the lights at the Marriott Center. And what does it mean essentially for BYU as they now have wrapped up non-conference play and now get ready for Big 12 play? We'll get into all that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like college football, tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you will always remember forever. But actually getting your tickets, that part can be the most frustrating part with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to you as the fan. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. My favorite part about the Game Time app, I'll say it, reiterate it multiple times, knowing the prices include all fees right up front makes the whole process stress-free. You're not going to get to the checkout window and see a bunch of fees, taxes or whatever nonsense they want to tack on at the end, all of a sudden you see that price jump. You know exactly what it is right up front. The app is super easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. You also can see exactly what your view from your seat will be right there in the app as well. So take a guess, we're going to buy your tickets and do it with our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, it's the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get your tickets from our friends over at Game Time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. A reminder for you guys, make sure you check out our brand new Everydayer Club. This is the way to get really the insider intel that you crave, but also get even more than that. Ad-free episodes, exclusive access to the new Locked On Discord server, which I feel like is kind of what Twitter was back in the day if you're a social media user, where it's not all rage bait and the other stuff. It's really just kind of fun, lighthearted banter and the news that you crave. And the best part is you can do it right now by going to lockedoncougars.supercast.com to join our Everydayer Club. And if you want to upgrade to the all access tier, guess what? That's got ad-free episodes, exclusive one-on-one chat or text access with myself, and a whole lot more. So once again, that's lockedoncougars.supercast.com to sign up today. All right, so BYU basketball, an incredible performance last night, 109-81 winners over Eastern Washington, and that's exactly what BYU is expected to do in this game. But I got to give credit to Eastern Washington. They play with an incredible amount of poise and confidence for a team that is now 2-11 on the year. Dan Monson, the longtime Gonzaga and Long Beach State coach, is now trying to rebuild Eastern Washington, and he brought his team in, and they made life very difficult for BYU, especially in the first half of that game. But as the second half wore on, AJ DeBonsa, he got off to a hot start. He had 10 points in the first 5 minutes of this game. He was at 21 points at halftime. Well, he goes on in the second half to tally a 33-point, 10 rebound, 10 assist triple-double. The first 30-plus point triple-double in many, many years in NCAA football, and the first triple-double in BYU basketball history since some guy named Kyle Collinsworth was roaming the sidelines for BYU as Mr. Triple-Double for the BYU men's basketball program back in the 2010s. We're talking is it 2013, I think is the last time that KC had a triple-double. So it's been a minute, 12 years, give or take, for AJ DeBonsa put on the court last night, but he outshined essentially anybody with that 30-point triple-double. And it shows, once again, what AJ DeBonsa is absolutely capable of. He came to BYU with a bunch of accolades, and all he has done, from my vantage point, is live up to them as well as anybody with as much hype as he could muster about him would have. That's the thing about AJ is I don't think he's lost sight of the fact that he is considered to be a seminal talent. He is considered to be, if you want to use the term one of one, well, that's kind of what he is. He's a 6'9" swingman, kind of the new generation of what the NBA is looking for as a guy who can create his own shot, has the ability to take over in clutch moments, but more importantly, can dominate a basketball game in seemingly every aspect. He shot 11 of 13 from the field. That's 85%. His true shooting percentage, if you care about that, which I actually think that's more important because it takes into account your twos versus your threes, as well as other metrics. True shooting percentage of his 33-point outing was 92.5%. We're talking about, this is like just a historic moment. Any of you who watched this game or were lucky enough, like myself, to be at the Marriott Center last night, got treated to a performance that we will not soon forget. Yes, he had the putback dunk the game before it against Abilene Christian. That was absolutely remarkable, an ESPN top Sports Center moment. But what he did last night, speaking of 33, 10, and 10. Oh, by the way, in addition to the fact they also tallied, I think it was two steals, as well as three. Had a he had three. No, I'll look at this wrong. Oh no, it was two steals. So, but regardless, his impact on the game is absolutely remarkable. And if you consider kind of the totality of the month of December for AJ, he has been a defensive force only while piling up, count them, one personal foul, which came in this game against Eastern Washington. He actually snapped a streak of almost 6.5 games without a foul called on him. And you consider how much of a menace he has been defensively. That shows how clean that he has been playing this season. Now, that can be a bit subjective with regards to the foul calls because obviously officials have control of what they call and the like, but I think we need to just appreciate what AJ is doing for BYU, and ranked 10th in the country. He said it himself that the floor, in his opinion, for this basketball program is the Sweet 16. This is a basketball program that has that the kind of the notoriety of appearing the most times in the NCAA tournament without a Final Four appearance. Well, if AJ DeBonsa can do what he's doing, he could lead BYU to that proverbial promised land for the first time in program history, because the guy that he's kind of tracking right up alongside, because it came for, if you looked at the Big 12 notes for this week in basketball, the only other player to have started a season with 15 points and 4 rebounds at the rate that AJ DeBonsa has done it this season was some guy named Carmelo Anthony in 2003. How did that season go for Carmelo and the Syracuse Orange? Oh, wait, a national title. He was the player of the year nationally. Carmelo went on to have an absolutely decorated Hall of Fame worthy career, both at the international and the NBA level. And these are the type of players that AJ, with his performance, is kind of bumping up against here. It's remarkable. And I don't know if I can do it justice, just how impressive it was last night, because quite frankly, AJ made it look easy. And the crazy thing was, it took a pretty incredible assist from him. He kicked it out. He was driving to the hole. He kicks out to Mihailo Boskovic, who hits a big three to give AJ that elusive 10th assist. And we were in the dying moments of that game. I think Kevin Young, had that shot not gone in from Mihailo Boskovic, he very likely gets subbed out of the game, and he comes up once again, just so close to a triple-double. But Mihailo stepped up, makes that shot, and obviously the crowd absolutely went nuts. And Rob Wright, in some ways, almost ruined it as well, because you could tell he was kind of like, hey, I'm going to keep – no, I think he heard the crowd chanting, AJ, because I think he understand the moment and say, hey, get the ball over to AJ, because Rob Wright, he's flirted with a triple-double as well this season for the BYU basketball program. But it was an incredible performance by BYU, but obviously topped by what exactly AJ did individually. BYU shot 54% from the field, made 38% of their threes, a season high 16 3-pointers made in this win over Eastern Washington. So a lot of good signs for BYU in this game as now they turn their attention to Big 12 play. Now they do have 12 days off, and BYU players have kind of scattered to the wind because they are actually have been cleared to return home or do whatever they're going to do with regards to the holidays. And they are now off until Sunday, when they will reconvene and get back into preparation mode for the Big 12 opener at Kansas State. So I am very curious to see how this team looks after a 12-day layoff leading up to that game against Kansas State. I know that guys like Kevin Young have lamented the fact that the layoffs in college basketball are just far, far too long. And I don't think he's necessarily all that keen on having 2 weeks off. But at the same time, having a young family like Kevin Young does, I think he'll enjoy the fact he's able to kind of have some downtime, enjoy the holiday, and then ramp it back up and gear back up for Big 12 play. And just one other concern I've got for BYU basketball is this game against Eastern Washington featured another kind of lackluster, slow start for BYU, especially on the defensive end of the court. I don't know what it's going to take for BYU to get off to a hot start and really kind of lock in from the get-go, but kind of the moniker of this team is they are truly a second half team. They will kind of sputter and kick their way through a first half, the first 20 minutes, but then they come out in the second half and just are like, hey, let's rock and roll. I don't know what Kevin Young has to do, whatever voodoo or whatever motivational tactics he has to use to get BYU off to the start in a first half like they do seemingly in every second half they have played this year. But if they don't have better starts in Big 12 play, it's kind of my one concern coming off this game is that teams that are better teams than anybody BYU has faced in about a month now will be able to bury them early on in these games. And they'll be trying to fight uphill throughout the entirety of that contest. I think the likes of an Arizona. I even think of like what Kansas State might be able to do on their home turf. You include also Texas Tech. You include the Baylor Bears. There are some incredibly difficult teams that BYU will face, Kansas, etc., that they will face in this Big 12 slate. And if you have slow starts against those teams, that is where you're going to find yourself in trouble if you're the BYU Cougars. But once again, Can I count anything that AJ DeBonsa does in terms of it being where they couldn't find a way out of those holes? No, I don't think that's necessarily out of the question, but I do wonder if there's something that Kevin Young can identify, or maybe over the next, it's roughly 2 weeks until they play against Kansas State in Manhattan. Can he figure something out where they can come out and start a lot faster? Maybe simply put, it's just the fact that they open Big 12 play and they understand, hey, now it's real. Now it's the big time. Now we're playing in the toughest conference, top to bottom in college basketball. And we're going to see what you're capable of and what you're made of. And I hope the message gets across to these guys. You got to start faster and cannot expect that the heroics of AJ DeBonsa, Richie Saunders, Rob Wright, etc., will come through and save you in the end, because they are very, very good teams, if not better teams, top to bottom, lineup-wise, that BYU will face in Big 12 play. And you give them a chance to bury you, and they will take every opportunity to do just that. So, yeah, there you go. Really impressed with AJ. Once again, just a seminal performance, incredible stuff, and congrats to him. And I look forward to seeing what he's able to follow that up with when BYU gets into Big 12 play, because this is a guy who, for the 4th time, has already been on the Big 12's Team of the Week. Speaking of kind of the top 5 guys in the Big 12 conference on a weekly basis, how much more accolades will he pile up? And will he truly be the maybe Big 12 Freshman of the Year, Big 12 Player of the Year? All that's out there for him, but he'll have to fend off some guys like Darren Peterson, Koa Pete, etc., because the Big 12 got some pretty downright elite freshmen, and they're spearheaded, or I guess led, by what AJ DeBonsa is putting on the court. All right, coming up next, we'll finish up today's show with thoughts on the season. This is going to be an interesting conversation because it melds sports along with Christmas. Now, bear with me. We'll explain more about that next and what to expect as BYU plods their way forward in the Big 12, but more importantly, as we celebrate the season of all seasons. And we'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the NFL season and NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it literally in real time. For example, if you're watching Monday Night Football last night, my beloved San Francisco 49ers, well, absolutely shined at Lucas Oil Stadium and have essentially put themselves in a spot. If they win out here, folks, could be the number 1 seed in the NFC. I'm all about this. But with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment, not just the San Francisco 49ers game. Any team or any game you're interested in, they've got it for you guys. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a big turnover. They let you jump into the moment. Speaking of FanDuel, with live spreads and money lines that just instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you also can bet on next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long with our friends over at FanDuel. And as they like to say, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for your patronage. By the way, big shout out to all of you who said hello last night at the Marriott Center. I like to walk the concourses before the game. I'm dead serious. Some people, for whatever reason, still don't believe that I'm out there among the masses, but I really do enjoy walking and getting to know people. And those of you who stopped me and gave a quick word, tapped me on the shoulder, dapped me up, and said, hey, great work on the podcast. You guys will never completely understand what that means to me, because it really is a labor of love and what I do here on this podcast. And we're 7.5-ish years into this project, 2,000 plus episodes, well over the 2,000 episode mark at this point. We've been on YouTube for 4 years now, and almost 4 years, I think. And the bigger point I want to make here is, as we go into the holiday season, I know we're well into it, but it's obviously Christmas week this week. If you're a fan of Seinfeld, Festivus is today. It's Christmas Eve tomorrow, and then it's Christmas on Thursday. And I do want to say, first off, a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays to you and yours out there, no matter how you celebrate it, what you're doing to celebrate it. Hope you have an incredible holiday season. It's been good to you so far. I sincerely hope that. But the bigger point is, thinking on it last night, those of you who came and said hello, and those who have said it at football games, whether it's the Big 12 title game, on the concourses, or walking around Lavelle Edwards Stadium, I've met Cougar fans literally just kind of out in the wild. I was at a pizza place not that long ago, and a guy stopped me and said, "Hey, I appreciate all your work." The thing about this is, this time of year, I get kind of I don't know, it's not melancholy, but I kind of get a little bit overwhelmed at the love that is shared with regards to what I do on this podcast. And I don't necessarily have a reason why I'm talking about this other than to say thank you. I'm lucky to do what I do. I'm lucky to watch sports and count it as what feeds my family. I draw a paycheck from sporting events, in particular in this circumstance, when it comes to BYU and my radio career with KSL Sports Zone. It expands out to the Utah Jazz, the Utah Mammoth, the Utah Utes, Utah State Aggies, Real Salt Lake, on down the list. I am a sports fan at heart. I hope you guys understand that. I hope that kind of bleeds through in why I do what I do here on this podcast, because I love the thrill of competition. I've loved it my entire life. And college football, it is first and foremost my pride and joy. It's the sport I fell in love with first, going to Lavelle Edwards Stadium and watching games with my grandpas I have regaled you with for many, many years. And obviously then watching with my dad. And we still connect, speaking of my father and I, over BYU sports chiefly, but it expands out to other sports. And this time of year, it's an incredible time of year because you spend a lot more time with family. I was at a family party over the weekend, for example, and one of my uncles, he walked up to me and said, "Hey," and it's one of his, I think it's in-laws, who she is not, one an aunt-in-law, I think it is, or something like that. He said she is not into sports, but if you want to know if you've made it, Jake, she talks about your podcast, and I know this lady, and sports are not her thing, and that kind of told me everything it felt like I needed to know about what we're doing here on this podcast. We have had an incredible 2025 here. We have set records with what we have done on this podcast. And I talk into a camera and a microphone every single day. And I say this all the time. I don't necessarily understand the overall reach that this podcast has, but we've got athletic directors watching the show. We've got university presidents who have told me straight up, "Thank you for your podcast." We have got head coaches of other college football programs who have told me, "Jake, you don't need to introduce yourself. I watch your show." That stuff's not normal to me still. And it's cool. It really does. It really does mean the world to me that you guys enjoy this product as much as you do. So I just want to reiterate, I hope you guys have an incredible Christmas season and a Christmas holiday upcoming. And I hope you guys will continue to enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy bringing it to you. Yeah, there's a lot of naysayers out there, and there's a lot of people in my mentions and also on the YouTube comments who like to take digs, and that's just par for the course. That's just what happens in society today. We try and tear people down. And the bigger point I think about when I want to get snippy and snap back at people, and I do it from time to time, I try and think more about the fact that, hey, you know what? Just let it be. You're doing a good thing. And I think the silent majority out there enjoy this product. And I don't want to make this sound like I'm really kind of pumping myself up, but it's more about the fact that this time of year, I kind of reminisce more on what we've accomplished with this show. And just understand that you guys have said we had, for the first time ever, we went over 600,000 views on YouTube in a 28-day period, which is about a month period. We had never done that. It was record breaking. We have been consistently among the tops when it comes to the Locked On Podcast Network, particularly in the college channel, in terms of downloads, views, so many of these metrics that really are what we watch on my end in terms of quantifying success with this podcast. But the bigger point to be had here is, from the bottom of my heart and from my family, speaking on behalf of my family, my wife and 3 kids, thank you, truthfully, for your support of this podcast. It continues to put food on our table, and I'm lucky enough that you guys find it of value. So once again, a Merry Christmas to you and yours. We will have a show tomorrow. It'll be a crossover edition with Locked On Georgia Tech, getting you ready for this game. We'll take Christmas off speaking of Christmas Day itself. And we'll be back on Friday with a game day preview edition of the show. But enjoy the holiday, truthfully, from the bottom of my heart, and saying to all of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays. And once again, thank you for your endless support of this venture. But until tomorrow, when we do that crossover edition on Christmas Eve, getting you ready from the Georgia Tech and BYU perspective on all things Pop-Tarts Bowl. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. Make your second listen, our friends over the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin's doing an incredible job covering all things in the great sport that we all love. And I guess the last thing to say, make sure you consider joining the Everydayer Club. It's a great way to share it with your family and friends. And if you're looking for that last second gift, you can gift memberships to the Everydayer Club. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com if you're looking for that last minute gift. But as always, thank you once again for being here every single day with the Locked On Cougars podcast, and come back and be an Everydayer right here tomorrow on the Locked On Cougars podcast.